So we'll just jump in with the relationship with Rush and the announcement with Adidas. So now Red Bull obviously has an academy program, and it's very well entrenched in Long Island and with the Long Island Junior Soccer League. What's the philosophy of creating now a Rush-Red Bull relationship?
Well, you understand that we have an academy. The object of the academy is to cover the top players, certain age group. Typically, until recently, it was U16 and up, and we've expanded to U13, U14. But the academy is one thing. The other thing that we have going for Red Bull are what we call the training camps. And the object of the training camps, in many ways, to develop an expertise in how to run a club, how to run a team, how to run clinics. And we have here at the New York Red Bulls about 150 coaches on the payroll who are available to soccer clubs throughout the tri-state area. So they go to local clubs, and they're typically being brought in to either run a team, run a camp, run practices. Sometimes it's purely technical. And we found that to be an extraordinary opportunity for us as a club in a way to market our product to the region.
Okay.
Those 150 coaches are undoubtedly our best marketing team. One, I think that they carry the brand very well, but two, they bring expertise. Having seen that success and knowing that Rush, which, as you probably know, I've been involved with now for many years, is spread throughout the country, I felt that in regards to the teaching of the sport, and how to bring expertise to all those clubs wherever they are in the country, and to a degree internationally, that bringing Rush and the New York Red Bull together, in fact, provided us, the New York Red Bull, an opportunity to expand our reach beyond the tri-state area.
Absolutely right. And now you've been involved with player development and sort of what's your, does Rush sort of represent your philosophy? What's your interest? Like, why are you so interested in player development? Why is it something that you've kind of focused in on?
Well, you have the whole afternoon to talk about development. It's a vast subject that has occupied, I think, people's concern for many, many decades.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you've heard over the years that there are great plans in the making that may not yield result for 5 or 10 or 20 years. Yeah. And therefore, plans after plans are being proposed. But at the end of the day, what matters is the reality of every day or every weekend. What is really meaningful to those children who play, what is meaningful to those parents who want their children to play, what's meaningful to all those clubs that try to embrace the sport and help grow the sport.
Right.
So the thing that we do at Rush, the thing that we do at the New York Red Bulls, we believe are meaningful. That would not go as far as saying that this is a solution. This is a much greater debate as to what should we do in this country.
Absolutely.
Growing the sport. At Rush, we know from experience that throughout the country, people who like the sport and who want to get involved for their children don't always have the expertise or the required knowledge to run a club.
Right. Yeah, soccer moms and soccer dads, they get recruited, right?
And Rush was really, really grew that way. It started with one club in Colorado under the leadership of Tim Schultz, who recognized that most people around him were not qualified to sit on the board of a soccer club.
Right.
And he developed a model that others throughout the country sort of looked at with curiosity. And one thing led to another. A second Rush club was formed, and then a third. And today we have almost 30 clubs throughout the country, touching 35,000 kids.
Wow, that's great.
Together with 20 other clubs internationally. Even in Brazil, it makes people wonder, what is it with Rush?
Right.
And even attract people from South America or Africa. The reality that Rush is all about the philosophy. It's not about the top club in the region. It's not about just select players. It's about the sport. So yes, Rush has a few clubs that participate in the US Soccer Academy for U16 and U18. Right. That 3 out of 30, which means we have 27 clubs of different size, reaching boys and girls of different ages, wherever they're located. And where, as the national organization, we just try to convey to them the best practices.
That's great.
So it's how to run a club, what is the relationship between the board and the technical director, what should the curriculum be. And yet, I'm even careful in saying that because curriculums can be different in different parts of the country, depending on the climate and depending on the local habits.
Right, right.
So I think a lot of its success is tied to its philosophy, but also its flexibility.
Over the past couple of weeks, you've had a lot of acquisitions of players.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about player development and players on the field. You don't really have a representation of any players now that have come through the development academy on the field, and you've gotten some new forwards, some strikers. Is there something going on? Is Thierry more injured than we know, or why is there an urge to get some more strikers? What's that philosophy and what's going on the actual field now?
Okay, so on the subject of the forward, Thierry is not any more than he was
He's okay.
reported.
Okay.
He's okay, and I'm optimistic he will play
Oh,
as
good.
forward today
Good.
against Philadelphia. As you know, Peggy started last week against Montreal. Now, there's a little bit of a history in the team that we now have, since the global head of soccer, so the person who is in many ways the ultimate decision maker in the personnel that we hired to play for the New York Red Bull, here and in Salzburg and in the 3 other teams around the world, is Gérard Houllier. People here probably know Gérard more for his years at Liverpool, where he was the head coach from 98 to 2004. In France, he's also well known for having coached the national team, for having won the first championship for PSG in the mid-80s, and having won 2 championships with Lyon in 06 and 07, at the time where Juninho and Peggy played for him in Lyon.
Oh, interesting.
And therefore, when debating how to construct the team for this coming season, Gérard was the one who promoted this idea of bringing a 38-year-old Brazilian, which was something that we all debated. Now, on Juninho, I was fortunate to know his coach in Vasco da Gama, because Ricardo, his coach, was also our coach in Monaco when I presided over the club. So I had confirmation from Ricardo that the 37-year-old at the time, Juninho, had played 50 games in the Brazilian Championship and still was the best player. So Juninho was easy in the end, but once he was here, Gérard promoted the concept of bringing somebody that Juninho had played with, Peggy, and therefore even before we run into issues with the salary cap, and you know that the cap complicates things
Absolutely.
a lot,
Right.
not that it doesn't have merits, but it just makes things harder on an organization like ours.
Sure.
And when we were hoping to keep Kenny and then be able to bring somebody else, it wasn't Espinola yet, we started talking about Peggy. We started talking about what is the team going to look like. Unfortunately, I say unfortunately because I think all of us here regret having had to let Kenny go.
Yeah, because he had a great year last year.
He had
played
a
very
great year
well.
last year, he played well with Thierry, and he was just a gentleman both on and off the field.
That's nice.
But MLS is organized in such a way that there is definitely the time to have parity among the teams, and you have to respect the rules.
Right.
Kenny was the one player we felt could go and free some space for other players.
Yeah.
So the team, and I think today you will see Juninho, Thierry, and Peggy start the game. Definitely has a French accent, and
Yeah.
you can hear from me.
You've had no
very
influence.
strong accent. And the other players, well, we try to build depth. I think to succeed in this league, it's not enough to have the stars. It's definitely a danger to have old stars, because the older we get, you may know it from having played yourself. I still try to play, and I know that when I get hurt, it takes forever to heal. So since our stars are in their 30s, we felt that we had to build probably an even stronger bench than we would have otherwise.
Great. So lots of conversation about Cosmos, right? And then obviously the potential of an MLS franchise across the river. So talk a little bit about Red Bull's philosophy in viewing just the New York market. Obviously, you've been here alone for several years. Obviously, you have an influence on Long Island. So Cosmos potentially being in Queens, Nassau County, and MLS trying to build a stadium and bring a franchise into Citi Field or into Queens. What's your philosophy on that? How does Red Bull view it?
Very transparent. You play the game, I play the game. We love the game. We would like to see it grow, wherever it can. So the more teams we have, the more people will be interested. The best it will be for all of us involved, be it on the professional or the amateur level. So the philosophy at New York Red Bull and the relationship with Rush is there to illustrate it. We want to reach out. We want to help out. We want people to be sensitive to what is going on. So if that involves a second team in New York or a third team or potentially more, if we look at the European example or the South American example, whether it's Sao Paulo or whether it's Buenos Aires or London or wherever else, you could have for 20 million people a large number of professional teams. Cosmos is somewhat special. I came to this country in 1978. So I was in Massachusetts when the Cosmos were playing, and then I moved to Chicago. I was in fact there when the Sting won their championship, and I've got to know Easton quite well. So I did understand at the time that there was a genuine interest, and there were a real crowd of followers. But I also understood that the way the league was structured was probably not the healthiest way for its survival. In fact, it did not survive. Something came up in the meantime. Out of all those names, all those teams that existed at the time, the Cosmos is probably the one that stuck the most. I think it's because it was in New York, but also because of the players who were here. Beckenbauer, Pelé, you can't ignore that. Even our kids, to whom it means less, I think the 20-something today, they relate to Beckenbauer and Pelé. And therefore, in the future, whatever form it takes, I think we could all benefit from a revival of Cosmos. And I'm quite willing to help out if I can.
That's awesome. That's terrific. All right, good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.